Go.
Good, thank you everyone for that really warm introduction. I'd like to talk to you about what the Architecture Guild is, why we have one, and what we're doing architecture for, and hopefully kind of dovetail into what Pete was talking about, how this is helping us to go faster, how it isn't just producing Visio diagrams for the sake of producing Visio diagrams. So when we think of the word architecture, particularly if I don't prefix it with the word software, we often think of something like this, and I've particularly chosen here a photograph of, it's fair to say, a divisive building. There are people who love this building. This is the Tricorn Center in Portsmouth, voted initially the third ugliest building in Britain and then the ugliest building in Britain, and also Grade 1 listed and award-winning for its architectural techniques. So as we can see, we have two very extreme views of this building. This is not architecture. This is a building. This is aesthetics at best. This is what something looks like. And the reason that I'm making the statement this is not architecture is for what is not shown in this photograph. There's no people, there's no cars, there's no bicycles, there's no interaction between the people who might want to use this building or the services it provides and the environment. Indeed, the environment is by and large hidden. We can see some street lights, we can see there's a road here, but other than that, we don't know a lot about the context in which we find this building. Let me tell you a bit about the context of this building. There are 8 flats in here, which were very quickly condemned after it was opened because they leaked and they were unsafe. This is the car park. This is the ramp for getting in and out of the car park. This was at one point during I believe the 1980s. This was South England's premier suicide spot. It was the top of this ramp here. The car park was a great place to conduct drug deals because it was nice and dark. It was secluded from view. The town centre is nowhere near here. The town centre is over here somewhere. But in order to drive adoption of this building, the council moved the market from the town centre to the first floor of this building here. Now remember, this ramp is how you get in and out of the first floor. So this is how you try and drive your delivery lorry in and out of this building, is up this fairly narrow ramp. There were huge shops in here, but no large no large retail company ever moved into this building because it's so far away from the town centre. Why would you put your shop where there aren't any people? So, regardless of what you think of the aesthetics of this building, they mean nothing outside the context of how the building is going to be used, how we interact between the system that we're constructing and the environment in which we're trying to put that. So there's a very influential built environment architect of the 20th century called Christopher Alexander, who's had his views on architecture have influenced both built architecture and software architecture quite dramatically. His pattern language was the model on which the design patterns community in software engineering was built. And what he said was that architecture is the interaction between people and the environment. We are searching for some kind of harmony between two intangibles, a form which we have not yet designed and a context which we cannot properly describe. And that sounds a lot like what we're doing. Louis said we have this problem with defining our products and defining what people are trying to do, what advice we're trying to give. That is that context which we can't properly describe. And of course, with software, we've got so many choices of technology, of implementation strategy, of developer processes, all these kinds of things. That yes, we haven't designed the form of our solution yet. And he said that when you build a thing, you cannot merely build that thing in isolation, but must repair the world around it and within it, so that the larger world at that place becomes more coherent and more whole, and the thing which you make takes its place in the web of nature as you make it. As Pete said, we're helping companies do their work 10 times faster. That means that their work already existed and they had a way to do it, and that they are now better, they're more efficient, they're more capable because of the things that we've added to their environment. That architecture is this kind of additive process. And of course, software architecture is more like Minecraft than construction. You know, if you've got a mountain, you can think, right, do I tunnel through the mountain? Do I build a road that goes up and around the mountain and back down, or do I just drive around the mountain completely? You can't just go, well, I'll just take my lower terrain tool and click that a few times until there isn't a mountain anymore. I mean, you can remove the mountain, and indeed, like open cast mining in America is a tool for doing that very quickly, but it's also very expensive, unless the mountain itself happens to be intrinsically valuable. So we get to change our environment. We get to say to customers, actually, what we think you want is one of these. You don't get to tell us. Or we get to say, we'll build the thing that you think you want, or we'll collaborate on it. Which is much more liberating, right? We've got many more opportunities. That also increases the complexity, because there are so many opportunities. How do we choose from them? And we're all making these choices all of the time, and that's something that we want to enable and want to promote. We don't want to say, right, this is all very hard, therefore take this person here who we're going to allow to solve this problem and nobody else is allowed to solve it. That's not the goal. The goal is to say, yes, we have these problems. Yes, we should all be able to solve them. We should all be empowered to solve them. We should have the tools. We should have the knowledge that we each need in order to make these decisions ourselves, and the ability to cross-check those decisions and just say, is this the thing that we want to be doing? So I would argue that software architecture is built of three things. So we have the elements, the things that we choose to build, which are pieces of software, whether that's code, whether it's deployment environments, whatever, and the relationships between those things. These are the elements out of which we're building. But being able to just chuck elements in all over the place isn't really a winning solution for building an architecture. If you look at something like concrete, it is just a big collection of aggregate that has no structure, has no shape, and you have to impose the shape on the outside. So there's form in addition to the elements. This is where we say, no, that thing doesn't belong over here, that belongs over there. So the idea that we have front-end and back-end services is itself part of this form. We've said these things belong in this context, these things belong in that context. Don't put one of those over there. It's a constraint, but it's a constraint that we've all chosen to abide by because it makes things easier to understand and easier to build. And then on top of that, there's aesthetics. There's let's make a thing that we want to use, that other people will want to use, that's that's pleasing to us, that adds to the environment. And where we think that maybe some bits of it aren't pleasing to the environment, we'll just keep them below the tree line so you can't see them from too far away. But we're not doing this because it's a thing that we could do. We're doing it in this context where we're taking what we know of the business. And that's not just product requirements, it's our business processes, our approaches to doing things, our regulatory requirements, all of the things that go into what the customer wants to do and what we want to do. And somehow mediating between that and the design. This is the world's first supersonic jet airliner, which is a Tupolev 2144. It looks a lot like a Concorde, but with this great big thing on the front that's called a moustache, which is brilliant. But you don't build a supersonic jet airliner because you've got a few £billion lying around and a bunch of aeronautical engineers and want to give them something to do. You build a supersonic jet airliner because you see value in being able to move people and goods around large distances at very high speeds. So it's doing something up here. But there's a lot of up here. And as we grow the number of services we grow the number of products we've got, there's a lot of down here as well. And what we want to do as architects is to put those two things together and make sure that they are harmonious. What we don't want to do, or what I don't want to do, is A, ever see rational rows again. Hands up anyone who's used rational rows? I'm sure. Okay, 4, 5, wow. Excellent. Hands up anyone who would voluntarily launch it again? No? 0 hands. So, I don't want to be the architect. I don't want to be the gatekeeper. I don't want to just produce diagrams for diagrams' sake. And to say, right, you're not allowed to make a decision until I've seen it and signed off. That's not what I want to do. As I said, we're all already making architectural decisions, not just developers, not just engineers, but the wider platform engineering, there are architectural decisions there. Test engineering, there are architectural decisions. Operations and process, those are architectural decisions. Product design, product requirements, how we gather requirements, how we record them, which ones we choose to build and which ones we choose to ignore. These are all architectural decisions. We are doing this all of the time. And what we want to do is to kind of bring that together and make sure that everyone is aware of the fact that this is all going on throughout the company all the time, and make it a bit more efficient. And so I want to be the person who makes us a team of world-class architects, not the person who does architecture and stops everybody else doing it. And ultimately for the benefit of efficiency, because sometimes a month in the lab does save an hour in the library. And I would argue that it's not just me who is saying this, that actually we've got some fairly foundational influence in the industry behind this idea. So you'll note, we're all familiar with the Agile Manifesto and the idea that what we want is working software. We want to ship stuff. We didn't say working software instead of comprehensive documentation. In fact, what we said was there is value in the items on the right. That, documentation for documentation's sake, documentation because we want to have great big phase exit meetings where all of the senior vice presidents of directorial governance of engineering excellence all do the sign-off to say that yes, we are ready to proceed to phase 1A, which is the pre-agenda for the requirements gathering facilitation exercise. Yeah, that's inefficient, that's not helping us. But actually, having the comprehensive documentation enables us to build working software. It enables us to focus on working software. So, no one in the Agile community ever said, don't use process, don't use documentation, don't have contracts, don't have a plan. They said, do those things, but remember why you're doing them. I'd like to just focus on this. Bertrand Meyer, who has written a very good critique of Agile, described the background as a bunch of overweight white guys around a whiteboard. These are the Agile signatories, with the exception of Kent Beck, who was ill and stayed in his hotel room while they were actually coming up with the Agile Manifesto. So even though he's a signatory, he didn't get involved in the discussion. Just interesting aside about what we believe about our industry. I want to focus on a little bit here, which is this particular overweight white guy. He's got a nice beard, and do a little bit of zoom and enhance, and we find this guy here. This is Martin Fowler, who's the chief scientist at a company called ThoughtWorks. They are a large software development consultancy. They do things like building stuff for clients. They also do what's called staff augmentation, which is where they lend a couple of their developers to your team when you need some extra people on board. What this guy doesn't do is he doesn't take the 2,500 software engineers who work at his company and say, right, could everyone show me what they're thinking and set up a meeting, set up half an hour in my calendar so we can agree that what you want to do is acceptable. You couldn't really scale to having 2,500 engineers by being a gatekeeper. What he does is he watches what's going on, distills the common ideas, distills the things where, oh, you're doing that thing, that's really helpful and would really benefit that project over there. So he doesn't tell everyone how to do their jobs. He sees how people are doing their jobs and then kind of forms a larger scale view or a common view of how what we're all doing could help what everybody else is doing. And that's kind of the model that I take as software architecture. So it's not the guy who produces the PowerPoint slide and says, right, this is the software that we're shipping next year. It's the guy who says, so this is how we have delivered software, let's see what worked, let's see what didn't work, and what we want to apply. Should we want to build 10 products instead of one product? Should we want to have a core team instead of a product team, and so on? So what does this actually mean in terms of the Architecture Guild? Well, so far we've had two guilds, the Architecture Guild and the Data Guild, which we realised have quite common goals. They're both looking at how we think about our products across all of the engineering. And so maybe they're actually the same thing. Maybe like one of them is just kind of looking outwards at what we build in terms of the connection of the requirements to the design, and one of them is looking inwards in terms of what we store, our data governance, compliance, data quality, ability to do machine learning, and all these things. But actually, they're doing the same thing and just applying different viewpoints on it. So, as of today, there is no Data Guild. This sentence was me putting a bolt through its head. What we're going to have instead is the Architecture Guild in 1 week, and then the Architecture Guild in the other week. But we're still going to have focus, so that, so that we're not all drowning under meetings. So like product people can turn up in every other meeting, and people who are interested in data, like Joe or like Pete McCready or Trudy or whoever, can turn up in the alternate meeting. But there will be a single kind of pool of information and a single idea of our architecture that is built out of these two things. And everyone's invited. This is, I think one of the core things about the guilds. One of the things that makes them valuable is that if you're interested in the topic of a guild, then you are a member of that guild. If you have something to contribute to a guild, then you are a member of that guild. But in this case, what we want to do, because we want to make sure that what we're doing across each function is helping everybody else, that like what we understand of our products is informing how we develop our products, how we test them, how we deploy them, and because we want to make sure that what we understand of that is going across all of the teams. What we'd like to do is, from now on, have a member of each chapter and a member of each team at the Architecture Guild meetings. Now, if you think about it, that's actually a very small matrix you can tick off with a few members. If I go to a guild meeting, then we already have a developer and a DB transfer wizard team person attending. So that's a row and a column ticked off. So it should be quite easy to, particularly if there are people who are interested who always want to turn up, we can very quickly kind of slice that pie and make sure that, I'm not saying exactly one, I'm saying at least one. If Rich is going, doesn't mean that Dave can't go because there's already a platform person. Everyone is welcome, and we would just like that kind of minimum level of attendance. So, with the remaining 6 minutes, does anyone have some questions? Yes, Pete.
What kind of thing will you be discussing at the next one?
The agenda is already on the wiki, and so we can answer your question by looking at the agenda on the wiki. This is the interwebs version of live coding, and so things will always go horrifically wrong. Don't forget that you can add things to the agenda. If we don't have time for everything, then they'll definitely stay on there. But there will be, again, the agenda is not imposed. If you have a question, then come and ask it. But we are going to be talking about the monorepo, and particularly monorepo with relation to test evidence, which was Mark's question. If all of these products are in there and I change one of the products, how do I satisfy my, one of my advice-giving customers that I haven't broken what they're doing? That's going to be a topic of discussion. And also, we know that the DB transfer wizard is going to kind of refer people into Themis for giving like DC pension advice once we've decided we want them out of their, or that we think they should be out of their DB scheme. And so what is the collection of documents we give them? Do we have, you know, two different fact finds? One was what we gathered for DB, one was what we gathered for Themis. You know, how do these things integrate? How do they work together? So there's, you know, some engineering requirements that are internal to engineering, and there's some like things that affect the design of our products as well. What a point I would make about the agenda is, don't feel like, if you want to try something out, don't feel like you have to kind of get approval from the Architecture Guild first. We're not, you know, the bunch of secret smoking men in our you know, jackets and velvet hats who make all of the hidden decisions in the company. If you want to try out Elasticsearch, you want to try out you know, Neo4j, you want to try out some cool new technology, do it, find out whether it works or not for you, and then come to the Guild and say, hey, this is working for us in these contexts, what else do we need to think about? I'm not trying to stop us doing new things and moving quickly on getting new stuff tried out, and just making sure that we understand what it means. Are there further questions you're on? Oh yeah, Kodrick.
So, I'm guessing the answer to this is yes, but is there a history of the outcomes that come from a previous build?
Yeah, so the other thing that is maintained, the two things that are important and maintained by the Architecture Guild are the Architecture Handbook, which is, you know, a kind of complement to the Engineering Handbook. It's the technology radar is like our current thinking about, you know, horizon technology, some important decisions that have been made, and a bunch of diagrams that represent the current state of our system. And also this decision log, which is when there are, you know, particular choices that we want to make and we want to capture for posterity and to share with other people. So, for example, one of the customers that Pete was talking about has recently asked, what is your data classification and data security design? And we have a page for that. That's a decision that we made under the aegis of the Architecture Guild. So rather than answer their question, I can just link to a page in a wiki and we're done. Any more for any more? No, I'm done.